All right, everyone, welcome to the monthly Fireside Chat. Every month we bring in thought leaders in the world of sales and personal development and entrepreneurship. And this month, I am beyond excited for this conversation because the man that is sitting with me right now is none other than Marcus Chan. Now, just to tee up Marcus, before I started a coaching business, I reached out to some of the top coaches, and I reached out to John Barros and Scott Leese, Marcus, a bunch of other people. But by far, Marcus was the most generous and giving with his time. At the time, I was just an AE at Salesforce, and Marcus had already pursued this full time. And he pretty much opened his entire playbook for me. Okay, he opened up his playbook and said, here's what you got to do. Here's how you build a newsletter. Here's what you use for your back office. Here's how you set up your offer. And I was just blown away. And Marcus has been mentoring me ever since. In fact, so much so that I got the opportunity to write forward to his book, Six Figure Sales Secrets, which was an Amazon bestseller. So let's dive.
Yeah, Mommy's going to go bring Haley to volleyball. I'll be back.
Allison, I'm going to mute you for a minute. Let's everyone get on mute so we don't have any interruptions. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A, but let's dive right into it. Marcus, you need no intro, but he is an author. He's a sales coach. He ran a business of, what was your business doing back at Cintas when you left? Just out of curiosity, how much revenue annually?
So we were doing, so my quota my last year was $183 million a year. We did over 200 million that last year. I ran a sales force with 110 plus employees.
So 110, so sales leader, individual performer, you name it, he's done it. He's the real deal. And now he's on this journey with me in entrepreneurship. So I want to introduce Marcus. Thank you for coming on. I got a lot of questions. So if it's okay, if we dive right in, first and foremost, I want you to give your definition of success in a context of personal development. So I was listening to some Jim Rohn this morning, and I thought of you when I heard this quote because of a lot of what we're going to talk about. But the quote was this: it was, success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by becoming an attractive person. I've never heard that quote before, but I immediately thought of you because your energy, your abundance, I've never seen someone who's just generally in a good mood, who's positive the way you are. So tell me what that means to you, that quote, and kind of how you have applied it in your career, your life.
It's interesting. It's funny because I think, the first time we met, the first time I interact with somebody, or they see me, any of my videos or my content or whatever, they have a perception like, oh, this is how he is. This is how he's wired. This is how he's born. I definitely was not this way. Early on as a kid, I was very introverted. I could barely speak. I had a lot of issues. And frankly, I was probably the complete opposite of what you see today. And early on, I realized through time, once I kind of got through some of the BS excuses you kind of have, I realized who I was not going to get me to where I wanted to go. And then I realized if I wanted to actually achieve more and attract more, I had to actually become more. And, I'm sure we'll talk about like later on, but ultimately, everything you have in your life right now, this is my belief, everything you have in your life right now is a direct result of how you think, how you act, and what you do on a consistent basis. So if you're not happy with whatever you're at, or it's only okay, it simply means you must become more. And that's something I realized over time. And this applied to every aspect of my life, whether it was in sales to business. I mean, heck, even relationships. I remember early on, in college, I felt like all my friends could, meet all the girls. And I was like this awkward guy. And I struggled meeting girls. And then I realized again, the same thing. I didn't become the type of person who could actually attract people, and not necessarily just through how I look or whatever, because still pretty average looking, but how could I attract them through who I am, my energy, my vibe, my ambition, my mind, etc. So to me, it's really powerful because when you realize the world you have right now can be completely shifted by you shifting who you become. You can start attracting a lot more in your life, whether it's abundance, success, love, or whatever it's going to be. But it's not just like thinking it, it's actually truly internalizing and becoming it.
Okay, so to kind of dive a little deeper on this, who were you when you were not attracting the life you want? Let's go back to kind of the original, because that's kind of harsh, right? I wasn't the person that could be successful. I had to change myself. Not many people have the self-awareness to admit it, much less the humility to admit that. But tell me kind of like what that was, who you were, and then who you had to become to have this wild level of success and frankly, everything you've done.
I think we go through seasons in our life where in certain seasons, we might be the best version for that season and kind of like the pond we're swimming in, if you will. But as you go into different ponds or bigger ponds, you start realizing, dang, I was just in ninth grade playing football with a bunch of middle school kids, right? You start realizing you're just playing at a small level. And I remember my first realization, from probably a more overall life impact view, was when I graduated college. Now, before this point, I did different internships and I grew up working really, really hard. So I was like, okay, like I've been able to have like relatively decent success in like, in these jobs I've had by just really outworking everybody. That just kind of worked because I grew up poor. I'm like, I can work hard. I can be great. It'll be awesome. And then I got my first B2B sales role. And I thought I could apply the same thing. I thought I could apply the same. I could work my ass off. I could do all these things. I could beat everybody out. I'll be the best again. It'll be great. And I realized very quickly that was not the case. I realized I worked super hard. I had the highest activity, highest everything. And I started realizing I was actually not that good. And it wasn't like immediate, but after a few weeks of me being that B2B sales role, it started becoming really clear to me, this is actually way harder than I expected, especially when I saw my peers like actually getting better results than me. Not amazing results, but still better than what I was doing. And really, I think there's always like a tipping point where something happens, or hopefully you realize it. I think most people have a tipping point. My tipping point, it's funny, I kind of posted about it today. My tipping point was literally my boss, this is about 7-8 weeks in, about 2 months in, pulled me into his office on a Friday afternoon at 4:00, which is never a good sign. And this is like right when the recession was about to happen in 2007. He pulled me into his office, and this was end of July, early August 2007. Pulled me into his office, sat me down, and pulled my numbers up, and basically told me I was a piece of crap and terrible at my job, and told me he was going to fire me. And it was really, I'd already started feeling this already, but having him verbalize it so harshly to me was a big punch in the face. Because at this point, I felt like I was giving my all, I was doing everything I could, but I wasn't getting the results. And I'm like, well, maybe time in the job is best training. And at that point, that's when it really started hitting me. I'm like, I have to become more. But during that same moment was also, there's a few other things were also part of my life that was really important, which was number one, I went to B2B sales because I thought it'd be a huge opportunity, but that was against what my parents wanted, right? So if you couldn't tell by the video here, I'm Asian, right? So my parents had Asian expectations. So they wanted me to be a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, or something more prestigious.
I'm Jewish, so I can relate too. My mom,
you know what I'm saying?
Like, we're going to grad school or else, and I took off.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So here I am, I'm like, okay, this is like I'm gonna go B2B sales, and I want to guess what their wishes were. I took the lowest paying job that had the biggest upside, I thought, and now I'm about to fail B2B sales. And I was like, I'm gonna let my parents down, right? I felt bad about that, and I felt bad about myself. And then on top of that, this girl I was very serious with, I want to propose to her. I couldn't even afford the ring. Like I couldn't afford the ring I wanted to get her, right? Because obviously I wasn't going to make any money. And her parents are very successful. They're also like immigrants that came over from Iran, so very successful, very educated. So here I am, like, this guy their son's dating, like just in some sales job, who's not that good either. So there's all this like internal, external pressure at that point. And that was the moment where the realization was like, okay, like either I'm going to get fired or I got to figure this out. And I decided to figure it out. And that was the exact moment. And that was like literally, no joke. I was like balls to the wall. I cut everything out of my life that did not serve me and went all in on becoming the best version of me. I started sacrificing everything, right? From time, money, energy into becoming the best version of me. It wasn't easy by any means, but what starts happening is you start having like a little bit of progress. And when you have a little bit of progress, that's the ultimate motivation. And it started to stack and build. And I started to just, study heavily into how to become the best version of me. And this sort of, and every year I do more and more and more. And what starts happening is you start habit and skills stacking. So I started stacking skills more and more and more. And over time, I actually didn't realize who I'd become. In fact, it was 2015. Yeah, 2015. So this is approximately 7 years later. At this point, I've been promoted 10 times in that time frame. I hit and exceed my number every single year. At this point, I was running an organization of 85 employees. And I didn't really realize I'd done anything, quite frank. I'm like, dude, I just work hard. I work hard. I work on myself. This is what I do. This is like normal. Doesn't everybody do this? And I remember at that moment, that's why I just genuinely, I was just naive to it.
You're kind of a freak, man. You're
total freak. I'm a total freak.
Possible, but no,
right.
Do it. That's why.
Yeah.
Why
it's
our
like
programs exist. So that's
yeah. So it's like you have to be a little bit obsessed and crazy to get what you want done, right? So at this point in 2015, I remember like I was like a new director, and I'm like one of the youngest directors in this company. This is a Fortune 500 company, and they're like, and all my reps were like, dude, like, how did you do this? How did you do this? I'm like, do what? I work hard. I show up. I wake up early. I do the right things. I sacrifice. I know what you're talking about. And I realized at that point I'd become someone completely different.
But here's the key. Here's the key. And I don't want to minimize this. You had become someone completely different. Yeah. You had become that person where you look now, it's like, holy shit, I have all these healthy habits. I work a full day. I'm focused. I manage my time. I'm honest. I know who you are because we worked a long time, but I think it would help for anyone listening and in the group just to kind of talk about that contrast. So you said, I left everything behind, right? Yeah. I said, I'm not doing this if it doesn't serve me. Tell me what that was. What did you leave behind? What did you add? Just give us some context for what you did change.
I'm going to go back in time and kind of start the journey, right? So like, because it's first off, in order to multiply, you must eliminate first. And that's when I realized, I'm like, there's a lot of things in my life that don't serve me anymore. So, at the time, 21, 22 years old, I'll give you some really simple examples. So first off, just like anybody else, I would watch the news, read the news. I'm like, this doesn't serve me, especially during a recession. It's all negative, if you can imagine. So I completely cut that out. No news.
It hasn't really changed that much, even outside.
It hasn't changed. So I literally, even to this day, I still never know what's going on. Someone's like, oh my gosh, this happened. I'm like, I have no idea. I literally have no idea. Instead, I replaced it. Right. And so part of it, so for example, I had a 45-minute commute to my office one way. So it's about an hour and a half minimum commute round trip. Replace that with books on tape. Like literally, no joke, literally went to a library, got Jim Rohn books, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, whatever it was. I took those CDs I had, literally illegally burned them to my MacBook, uploaded to my iPod so I could play it with that trading CDs in my car. So I could listen and burn to me, and I'll burn this into my brain just on the drive, right? And no, sorry, that was on the drive back, right? On the drive there, I would literally practice and role play for 45 minutes out loud. I'm not even joking like that. So I would complete silence. I'm literally role playing every single frame of every script that I'm gonna run that day, right? Because I want to be able to flow like butter and make it completely smooth when I was on the phone with the prospect.
And this is the same company you were failing at where you almost got fired pre-recession.
Exactly right.
Snapped into gear. I can't go on this way. And you just cold turkey decided to.
Exactly right. So when you start to think about that, like now suddenly, like when most people are just driving and doing whatever, I suddenly now had 45 minutes a day of just like pure new learnings, right? So that's like what, hour and a half, what 4.5 hours a week. So every single week I'm getting education just on driving. Most people listen to crap. I get 4.5 hours of role play and practice every single week, right? Where the math is 5.5, where the math is. So you get my point, but I was doing things that most people wouldn't want to do. I would practice and role play at night. Like no joke, I literally, instead of like watching Netflix was on CDs back then, right? Or DVDs, right? Instead of watching Netflix or watching cable or doing whatever, I literally would practice some role play in my apartment, my tiny little apartment, over and over. I would literally take my camera, actually a physical camera, and I'll record myself role playing, so I could watch the game tape and redo it. When I went sales calls,
to even do that, were you just hearing like Brian Tracy and Jim Rohn talk about like getting better at your craft, or how did you decide that you needed to record yourself and play it back and work on yourself?
So I grew up playing sports. I think probably most people did, right? A lot of people did, right? And one of the things I learned early on was how important it was how little self-awareness we actually have about ourselves. Like most time we have zero idea how we come across and how we deliver and how we speak and how we do things. And oftentimes we do things that hurts us. And sales is a death by 1,000 paper cuts. So if you're unaware of how you speak and how you deliver, how you do certain things that actually hurt you, that's really dangerous. But once you become aware, you become dangerous in a really good way. So I was a competitive swimmer. My coach would literally he had this underwater camera so we could see our form as we swam. And I'm like, it's really interesting. I'm like, I'm gonna apply that same concept to sales. Now, this is super nerdy, Ian, but at one point, I'm actually an ambivert. I'm right in the middle, and I really struggle talking to strangers, people, and any type of social environment. But I got really into street magic as a kid. No joke, like David Blaine's street magic, right? So I early on to get really good, I would practice and I would record myself on my dad's like JVC camera, so I could see how I was doing those moves. I'd watch myself in the mirror. I use his camera so I could see what I was actually doing. So I've taken that same type of learning principle of being able to see what I was doing to sales. And it just helped increase my self-awareness. Didn't make me perfect, but made me better. Like literally, even at that time, I would like take my phone, and because there were physical in-person like sales calls, like discovery calls and demo calls, I would like download like some whatever Android app I had, like tape recording, and I'll hit record and have my phone out so I can record my calls and then see how they went, so I can go back and play them later. So I became obsessive about trying to become better.
Yeah,
and things like that.
And it kind of goes back to your childhood too, because I remember you posted that you had maybe a stutter, you couldn't speak to a certain point. Tell us, because that's interesting, because I think of someone who's very articulate and smooth talking, and your tone and just your communication is very good. Yeah. So was that from what was it? Did you have a stutter growing up, or what was the communication barrier that you were faced with? Was it language, or what tell us just kind of where that originated?
So I appreciate that. So English is actually my second language. I didn't start speaking until I was 4 years old. And when I spoke, I had a stutter. And I would mix up the languages as well, because I grew up speaking Mandarin. So that was like this whole thing, just trying to learn to speak. So because of that, I couldn't speak very well. I stutter. In fact, I still stutter to this day. So once I got to like school age, I had to go through like speech therapy. In fact, there was times where they almost put me in the special classes because they thought I didn't know anything. So I was not doing well in school. I struggled speaking. So for years, I go to the special therapy classes to improve how I spoke. And what's tough is like, growing up, and I grew up in Springfield, Oregon, Eugene, Oregon, very small town. And, it's generally pretty white. I was like, so not only was I like one of the only Asian kids who looked different, I sounded different, and I spoke different, and I dressed different. So as a kid, you become very insecure when you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm just like a different kid. Like I don't really quite fit in. So hard to make friends, hard to do everything. Yeah. So because of that, you start realizing like, man, I gotta get better at this, right? But in hindsight, and I know you said this before, the problem is a gift. That gift I was received of that speech impediment forced me to realize this is a huge weakness for me. How can I improve and get better? And it's gotten better over time. It's not perfect. I still talk fast. I still stutter. I still say the wrong things, but it's like an evolution. It's like trying to get a little bit better every single day, every single year.
What I'm hearing is a ton of motivation deeply ingrained, from getting the ring to proving your parents wrong, to overcoming a speech impediment, to growing up poor. Is that all, I mean, because a lot of people would take all of those as reasons they couldn't be successful, whereas you took it as reasons why you had to be successful and motivation for going against the odds and proving people wrong.
Yeah, I think a lot of so early on, I think a lot of the motivation was fear-based. And what I mean by that was because we grew up so poor, no joke, I legitimately worried about being homeless as a kid. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like if I don't like figure out my life, I'm like 6 years old. If I don't like figure out my life,
What do you mean
my act together.
homeless? Were you camping? Were you in a trailer?
Well, I literally was scared. So we had a Chinese restaurant growing up. My parents had a Chinese restaurant, and something would happen. Like, say for example, we had maybe it was a rough month in sales, or somebody would break in, rob the place, take all the money, and we have to go in and fix everything up. And literally, the first thing that popped in my head is like, oh my god, we're going to lose the restaurant, which is the only source of income, which means we're going to lose the home and become homeless. So because I grew up thinking that it was like almost like a scarcity mindset, if you will, I'm like, I'm gonna do whatever I can to control my situation. Like I would always like try to play 3 to 5, 10 steps ahead in every single thing I would do to increase my upside winning. Now I didn't think in that type of mental model at the time, but that's what I was doing, right?
Yeah.
As a result, so that was kind of the first kind of early thing. But early on though, all those things I mentioned that I felt were reasons why I couldn't be successful, those were real things in my head. And I had to accept them as truths, right? I'm like, I can't meet girls and like be cool and like date girls because nobody wants to date some scrawny 5'7" Asian kid, right? But then what's interesting is, right?
You're not so funny anymore, but keep going.
But but here's the thing, right?
Vacation pictures.
But what ends up happening is like when you start to expand your mind, you start realizing what's possible. Like it's like you see certain things, and unless you want to be completely oblivious, there's certain truths that kind of shatter your paradigm, right? So you're like, oh crap, like that Asian dude is meeting a lot of girls. That's crazy. Oh wow, like hey, that kid's an immigrant too, but he's really successful. Huh. Wait, that guy can barely speak, but he's way more successful. So you start realizing, like, wait a minute, there's patterns here. There's clues here. I remember starting B2B sales. I'm like, no one can be successful in B2B sales. You can't make that much money. And then I meet a 22-year-old kid who's making like $250,000. Like, oh my God, like what am I thinking?
Yeah.
So you start realizing there's so much of a world out there, and you can either keep believing the false belief, or you realize your circumstances are only where you start and they don't determine where you're going to go. So you can make a decision right now where you want to go with that.
And I know none of this has changed for you, and it's been 16 years since this awakening, and it's only been stacking, but we're talking a lot about mindset. And what I heard you say is surrounding yourself or seeing people that inspire you to do better because it's possible. I heard you say having deep motivation, a deep why. I think a lot of people have generally a good mindset, and they are motivated, and they know why they're doing what they're doing. But where you excel, and I want to dive into this a lot, is your habits, and specifically how and where you spend your time. So I'd love you to kind of share what your habits look like, maybe what they were before. You mentioned the news and consumption of stuff. And now what they are, and more so what your habits are today, right? What you do today. I know you didn't start with all the things you're going to share, but maybe some context is to like, what's the most important habit to develop first, and then share what you actually do now as a North Star for people to see how and where to spend their time. Because you were, I would consider you even more disciplined than me and more focused than me, and I don't see that as often as a lot of the people I encounter. So for me, you're a benchmark of like what discipline and focus and habits look like. So give some context onto like where you started on this journey, like what habits you first started adopting, and then kind of what that looks like now in your day to day.
Yeah. So I think, and I appreciate that, right? It's interesting. There's a quote behind me. It's an Aristotle quote. It says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is then not an act, but a habit." One of my favorite quotes. My former EA got that for me, made for me. So, I think it's interesting because who we become is ultimately determined by the habits we have right now. And I think early on, I think I was gifted with developing some habits that pay me long-term dividends down the road that I didn't realize. So, for example, one of the gifts I was given as a kid was working at the restaurant at a very young age. So, meaning when all my friends, when we're 7 or 8 years old, are out playing basketball with friends, I'm in my parents' restaurant in the back, chopping mushrooms, peeling onions, washing dishes, doing all the hard stuff that no kid wants to do. And I only got to go play after I got all my stuff done. So what ends up happening, and by the way, that means like work a full work week. But
child labor was not a thing back.
Yeah. I'll tell you later how
when your parents, it doesn't apply.
I was free labor until I convinced them to pay me, which I'll tell you about later. But it's interesting is like you learn how to delay self-gratification. That becomes like a little bit of a habit, right? And that kind of helped me down the road. Now,
delayed gratification was the first thing.
Yeah,
developed.
Yeah. It's just, and like I didn't know it was called that at the time. It's basically like doing really hard things for a really long time, regardless of how you feel, knowing there's no payoff right now. And that was an early one. That was definitely a key habit. Another key habit that was useful for me as well, and this paid me dividends later, I didn't even realize at the time, is because we grew up really poor and very frugal, we saved a lot of money. Like meaning we would like whatever we could scrimp, we would save. Whatever way we could save a penny, we saved a penny, right? Which is good and bad in different ways. But this taught me a really good habit early on because once I got into B2B sales and I started actually making some decent money, I would save and invest it. So that was a really good habit already, just kind of start paying a little bit dividends, right? Let's go into some more tangible habits though. So, early on, as I mentioned, like what I was consuming, right? That was really, really big. I started to eliminate negative consumption of things. This is gonna be hard for some people. I started cutting people out of my life. I looked very closely to people that are in my circle, and I realized I had like a lot of acquaintances, but very few friends. So I had a lot of like drinking buddies from college who we party all the time, and that wasn't really serving me, And I realized even at the time, and again, whether you drink or not, it's entirely your choice. But me going out partying every weekend was actually hurting me, right? Because number one, it spent money I probably shouldn't spend. I couldn't afford really. Number two, it impacted me for days. And then of course, with a foggy brain, you are less precise, less focused, less calculated, less intentional in everything that you do. So I had started cutting out some of that stuff too, just like whatever was kind of negative impacted me, right? I started adding in, practice and role playing, that stuff I mentioned. As I started getting more focused in my life, I realized, and you guys spoke about this before, it fell into one of 5 buckets that my habits are falling into. I call it the M5, right? And the M5, basically, habits kind of fall within that. So the M5 is kind of simple. So number one is M is mind. So doing things that would feed my mind. I mentioned that before. It's like learning, it's investing, it's why you're here. You're investing in yourself. You're reading books that feed you. You're eliminating things that don't feed you, etc. Right? So that's really, really key. Then there is.
I want to pause there.
Yeah.
What that means, and I relate, is every day, instead of consuming content that leaves you feeling empty and depleted, it means consuming content that leaves you feeling inspired and more intelligent. And it's really about what you listen to, who you listen to. It's about, being somewhere like this. This is a perfect example of consumption in a really healthy way, right? It's about the books you read. For me, it's 1 book a month. But when you add that for 5 years, that's 60 books. That's a lot. And even in between, who I was listening to Jim Rohn earlier, just getting ready for this, motivational speaking, are you listening to just music that's going to pump you up? Or are you going to listen to something that's really going to grow? Because it's the same amount of time in the day, right? Same amount of time. So I quickly pivoted my runs from music to books, and man,
exactly.
People say, oh, that's boring. It's not. It actually makes me run harder because I'm like, just juice.
Exactly right.
Hear the stuff. So that's mine. It could be spirituality, it could be faith, it could be whatever that aligns you to who you are, consuming that. So now I'm consuming entrepreneurship books and, you know, some of the stuff that helps grow a business. So that's the first M. Continue, Marcus.
Dude, I love it. You're exactly right. It's like whatever can go into this right here, the territory between your ears, the hardest territory to manage, whatever goes in that territory, you feed it the right stuff, right? It's just anything that's got to feed it right. The next M is muscle, which is how are you taking care of your body? Like, and these go to daily habits. How are you moving? What are you doing? Right. You know, so, you know, for me personally, you know, back then, even now, you know, I've set workouts I do every single day. I also make sure I get 10,000 steps every single day. So there are non-negotiables that happen regardless. So for example, even my workouts, everything is premeditated, pre-calculated out. So I know every single day I'm gonna do between 360 to 480 repetitions of a targeted muscle group. Focus is intentional. I know exactly what I'm gonna do. So I go in, I can knock it out without thinking, right? So that's really key, just like that body movement, because the more you, like, the healthier you feel, the better it's gonna be. And this goes into also what you eat. So years ago, I ate whatever, right? And it totally worked when you're out of college, you know, because your metabolism's awesome. Everything just kind of melts off of you. It feels great. But as you get older, it gets harder. And I kind of started realizing that. And I remember I still didn't really pay attention until I was about 25, 26. And then I looked in the mirror. I'm like, oh, that wasn't there before. I'm a little bit heavier. And my wife and I, we realized we knew nothing about nutrition and food. Like, our nutrition was like getting a food that said, oh, it says organic. Oh, it said it's healthy, which, by the way, most of that stuff is fake, right? So I didn't know how to read a nutrition label. I didn't know how to meal prep. I didn't know how to pre-plan. I didn't know how to do any of those things. So I started building health habits around food, around grocery, what's in the house. So even now, it's like we have a set thing we always buy every single week. It's all groceries. It's all veggies and meats and whatever, right? We have certain rules we follow for eating, and I'm consistent, and every meal's pre-planned out. I know exactly what I'm gonna eat. So I only think I can eat the healthiest thing that has nutritious. And what happens is also when you go into nutrition, when you eat properly, it actually allows your brain to think better. So gut health is tied to your brain health. So when I realized that, I'm like, oh yeah. So it's kind of like if I eat a huge pizza, love pizza for cheat meal.
Your energy is processing the food, and your gut is processing, and your brain is not. It's everything's happening in your gut versus in your mind.
Totally.
Being light, and eating clean, for sure.
And if you do a sleep track, like I have an Oura ring, some people use Fitbits or Whoops or whatever. Like, I can tell when I had a bad meal the night before because my sleep is completely jacked up, and I feel it the next day. And I need that sleep for proper body recovery and mind recovery.
So I would say muscle, add what you eat. You can say munchies to remember.
Munchies if you want. All right.
Your rest, right? Because you incorporate a lot. Your sleep. So diet, exercise, and sleep really kind of falling under that to rejuvenate muscles too, right? In terms of
absolutely. Now, before the third M, I used to call it matter, but you and I talked, we should call it mission instead. So mission, right?
So you changed it.
Like,
good.
I love it. I think it's a way better word. So like, are you doing things? Do you have habits every day that drive you towards your mission? Every single thing that you do in your calendar, what you're doing, right? Like, this is actually why my days are literally planned from when I wake up to when I go to bed in my calendar. So this way I can execute on my mission. And to even reinforce it, here's a little sub habit. Before I go to bed, in my gratitude list, I write down 3 things I did that day that moved me towards my mission.
What's your mission?
Right. So it depends on what you want to focus on. So for example, also 10 times my goals, but like for me, I literally want to impact 1 million B2B sales professionals to maximize their lives. That's it. It's super simple. So what did I do today to help other people? So for example, right now I'm here. I'm hopefully, if you can walk with at least one nugget, it's going to help make you better. I'm like, great. That's awesome. Right. That's my goal, because ultimately, B2B sales changed my life. I know it changed Ian's life, right? When you can master it, it's incredible. Right. So that's key. So doing things that drive towards your mission, and you might have different missions in different parts of your life as well. Maybe you want to be a great husband, great spouse, whatever.
Your mission also, I want to be really clear. People think that your mission needs to be 10 years out, needs to be this massive mission of what do you want to do with your life. That is not actually as effective. What I find extremely effective with the third M is, who do I want to be today? what is the best version of myself that I can show up as? And that's all I can control. So my mission has to do with, serving and showing up as an example for God, really, in terms of the way I treat people, in terms of the way that I interact, serve, and care, and as a testimony. And that never was my mission before, right? That's evolved. At first in sales, it was to make $1 million. And I got there, I'm like, well, this isn't as fulfilling. And then it was to be the best husband and father I could be. And that was very fulfilling. And now it's at a different level where it's more spiritually connected. So your mission is about what do you need today? Who are you now? And where do you need to focus? And I find just defining what your ideal self looks like and holding that as your standard is really inspiring on a day-to-day basis versus having something, I don't know where untap your sales potential goes. I generally don't. I don't know if it turns into a podcast or we have thousands of people or what we're going to do, but I know how I want to show up. And if I can just focus there, then the rest tends to happen, which goes back to that quote, right? Success is something you attract by being an attractive person. So my mission is around the type of person I want to be so that I can attract success. So kind of coming full circle. I don't know how that resonates with how you show up every day, but I think it's important to call out just the short term versus the long term.
Well, if you're not clear with where you want to go, it's really hard to show up right now, right? I mean, the mission is a place that drives you, right? It pulls you towards, it gets you out of bed in the morning. So you have to have it. If you don't have it, you end up doing someone else's mission, right? Your boss's mission, right? Your company's mission. So if you're not clear, you got to figure out what that's going to be for you, right?
So what do you say to someone in sales before, again, because sales, okay, you're an entrepreneur, it's a little easier when you're serving people for a living, but you're working, you're 25, 30 years old, you don't have a huge amount in the bank. You want to be an entrepreneur someday, but right now you have to be successful in your job, but you're not necessarily feeling that deep mission and purpose. Because I see this all the time. What do you say to someone that is struggling with their mission and can't leave to go serve 1 million people, for example?
Oh, yeah. So, I remember at one point, I realized I didn't really have a mission because for so long I was operating out of scarcity, fear, being poor, and all these things. And it was literally years later, and at this point I had achieved some decent success, and I came across a book by Brendon Burchard, High Performance Habits, for anyone's read it. And one of the things that I found really powerful in there, it became very clear to me, and he probably said it in different ways, but for lack of a better term for phrasing, he basically said, hey, like if you were to die tomorrow, what 3 words do you want to be remembered by? If you were to die tomorrow, what 3 words do you want to be remembered by? And I remember reading that. I'm like, wow. I'm like, what would I want to be known for? What do I want to be remembered for? And that's the first place I would start. Because for me at the time, I had to really sit down and by the way, I had deep think by myself, all I'm what do I want to be known for? What would be my 3 words? And it came down with 3 simple ones for myself. And to this day, it still drives me regardless, right? So it's kind of like, your mission may kind of shift overall, but you're still gonna be a certain kind of pull you together. So for me, it's like, okay, number 1's influence, like to positively help somebody else. This is whether they're a client or not, doesn't really matter, but to positively influence somebody else. This could be the neighborhood kid. This could be the grocery clerk. Just be like a good human being, right? Then to legacy. So when I pass, people like, wow, not just build a huge business. It's like, wow, this guy, he really was able, he truly gave, he really helped other people. And I want that to be known, right? Whether they're a client or not, doesn't even matter, right? That's why I'll love, even my brother-in-law, dude, I love watching your YouTube videos. He's not even in sales. He's like, it helps me as a principal. I'm like, that's crazy, but that's awesome, right? And then last is love, meaning, and I look at love meaning care. Everything I do is with care and intention. That means living intentionally to be present for whoever you are. So for example, Ian, when you and I first got on a call, I think most people are kind of they're kind of like, these are my secrets or whatever, but they don't even want they're kind of lame about it. I intentionally care and I want you to be successful. So I'm like, dude, ask me whatever, I'll tell you whatever. I'll help you. There's some people help out there. This helps me towards my mission. We just help more people, right? We're all going to win. And that's how I do things. So if you don't know what your mission is, start with that. Try to find at least maybe 1 word first.
Yeah.
One word first. They build on that.
You could talk about, again, it goes to the short term, but you can, Brennan's was bring the joy. every
Yeah.
day, bring
love
the
it.
joy, right? Because
That's right.
he was struggling. He's like, why aren't I happy? I'm a happy person. I got to bring the joy. And
Yeah.
then the joy came to him. Mine is inspired by example.
Yeah.
Because that captures inspiration, example. What do you do when no one's looking, right? What do
Yeah.
you do when no one's looking? That's the true test of
You remind me actually of, so when I was 22, 23, I didn't struggling, right? Not knowing what's going on, kind of getting some success still, but kind of just really struggling. So my mission, if you will, at the time was actually really simple, which was I was really scared. So it was action cures fear. Action cures fear. So my mission was like, be brave, basically be brave every day. It's cold call, you're scared.
There's three, be brave every day.
Be brave every day, right? Probably more positive, right? But I'm like, action cures fear. I just got kicked in the teeth. Action cures fear. Action cures fear. Action cures fear. That became my mantra, my affirmation, my mission, if you will. So you may have to, and you're gonna go through seasons, I think, when you're gonna shift it a little bit, but you got to determine based on you, right?
I love it. So what are the fourth and fifth? And then I want to open it up to the group because we can go for hours.
I know that's what happens when you and I talk, right? So, yeah, cool. So, and they're all really important. This fourth M is really important. It's marriage. And whether you are married or not, in a serious relationship or not, it's treating everyone that's in your circle like you're married to them. How would you invest into that relationship? Because just like everything else, and you and I talk about this, Ian, it's like sometimes those relationships are really good at the beginning, but as time goes on, we start to let things slide. We don't necessarily show up the best way. We don't necessarily deliver, and we're not a good husband, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever. And then same with friends, right? The people in your circle that you're close with, are you giving to them? Are you serving them? Are you helping them, right? So I think it's really important you have that really good balance, because a life without relationships is a very, very lonely life. So you want to make sure you know who those people are and you want to invest into them.
Yeah, I just posted on it today. I looked at the top 5 billionaires and all are divorced. And it's like, you see that a lot with sales, business, very successful people, is they sacrifice. They make a lot of sacrifices, get there, and you don't have to. That's the reality, right? You just need to value your relationships as much as you do yourself and your career, which takes
100%.
Humility.
100%, right? And it requires making tough decisions, right? And that's what's really important. I think sometimes we think it's going to be easy, but you make tough decisions, right? You know, like everyone's trying to tell a story probably of, maybe retiring at 35, and there's a lot of reasons why I did that, right? But one of the biggest ones was like, I felt like I wasn't being a good husband.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't. I was traveling all the time in a hotel room 100 nights a year, not being a good dad, not being a good husband. Yes, I could say, yeah, when I was there, I was great. But I'm like, but how about the rest of the week? Yeah. So how can I create a life for myself where I can truly give to the M5 the way I want and create a life and design that way, right? So that's important. And then last M is money. So do you have your financial house in order? That's from your what you're making to how you actually run the house and being profitable and cash flowing yourself, right? And I think a lot of times most people don't do a good job with this, right? And even when they make a lot of money, they're not very good with the money. And one of the reasons I was able to fortunately, retire at 35 was because I was really smart with my money. That's what it was. Like I started investing really, really early on, diversifying and doing all these things and paying long-term dividends. And that was really, really key. So like being good with not just generating money, but knowing how to keep your money and how to multiply your money. So if you can have good habits for that as well, for example, I automate everything. And I also do things like I track my cash flow every single day for the business. I look at every number every single day. I have better control on those type of things. So when you have the M5 dial and you have habits that are built and systems around it, it's amazing how much more fulfilled you become because you actually created a systemized life by design. And some people think, wow, it's kind of crazy, it's kind of overly disciplined. But I would argue the opposite. When you are not disciplined in these things, you eventually make short-term decisions that actually hurt you in the long run.
Yeah. It's 2 words come to mind. One is intentional. You're extremely intentional. The other is structure, right? And people think, oh, structure is bad or it's, I feel trapped. No, structure actually creates freedom. You don't get to retire at 35 or 41 in my case to go do what you love, a dream, unless you put yourself in a position where you can do that. Because you had you had your son when you did that. You're providing for your family. Same with me. but it's a calculated risk because
Correct.
you had saved enough and you knew probably like I'd have to go 10, 20 years making
Yep.
nothing for,
Exactly right.
for me to run out of money. So I think that structure creates freedom, discipline creates
Correct.
freedom. And
Correct.
I just appreciate how you show up, brother, and in every way, man. You're just a good person, and that's kind of the other takeaway is good people get rewarded, who work hard and who have discipline and intention.
Right.
It's not just being a good person, it's
Yeah.
all the other things, right? And so it's great to see how far you've come, and I know you're just getting started. So hopefully a lot of people can learn.
We're just getting warmed up, man. We're just getting warmed up, you and I.
That's right. That's right. I mean, you're like my brother from another mother. So everything Marcus says, I echo. There's a reason I teach what I teach is because the mentors I have think, live, and work and act like Marcus. And that's who I surround myself with. So I just appreciate you helping me get this business up and running. Let's turn it over for questions. If you guys could raise your hand, ask Marcus anything, could be sales, personal, discipline, health, whatever. The guy's dialed in. So let's put your hands up. If you could just use the emoji. We have Julian will go first. Go ahead, Julian. I'm going to pin you over here and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, Marcus, nice to meet you. And Julian, I work at Oracle. I think you mentioned that you were eliminating some substances or bad habits from your life, and you were making some really good investments. What were some of those things that you eliminated from your life? And then what were some key investments that you made?
Yeah. So good question. So elimination first. So I don't drink anymore. All right. So that's probably the first thing. It was one of those things where I just realized over time, it wasn't really serving me. Part of it was actually kind of out of almost, so before, even early on, I drank a lot. Like it was pretty common, 2-3 nights out of the week, binge drink, blackout. Just that was normal, right? That's what you do. You're in sales, go, work hard, play hard. I did that for a while, and I started to stop doing that, but I still drank, right? It was still it was recreational. Maybe instead of having like 15 beers, I'd have 7 beers, instead of having like 10 shots, I'd have 7 shots. So it wasn't like a massive shift. I started getting better. I started kind of reducing it down, right? I used to smoke a lot of weed, stopped smoking weed. That I found like that personally, actually, maybe I felt like I couldn't remember things very well. So that was like my big substances were really those 2 things, especially early on. And then started reducing it down, got rid of weed. I started reducing my drinking. And like as the years went on, probably I think it was by 32, I was probably down to like maybe 1 or 2 drinks a week. And then officially, then probably 33, it was like maybe a couple drinks a year. And then 35, 36, no drinking, right? Very rarely, like maybe once a year, I'll say. I 1 drink this year, right? 1 drink this year, right? And I was like, I'm good. I don't really need this. So that was important. Another substance that I've also gotten rid of is actually social media. Now, it sounds crazy, especially if you follow me on social media. You're like, oh my God, he's always on there. But like, it's very intentional. So like, it's all processed out. It's all scheduled out. My team's in my inbox. They manage everything for me. They take care of all that for me. I go on there maybe like once a day for 30 minutes. And when I go on there, even my news feed, I use a Chrome extension. It hides my news feed. So I go on there to do what I want to do and not be controlled by the algorithm. Right. So that's like stuff like that. I'm like, what else can I eliminate? So that's some stuff I eliminated, right? That was my big vice is really drinking. That's what it was, right? In terms of what I invested in. So I'm a firm believer you get the highest multiples when you invest in this order. So number 1, you invest in yourself. You're all here. You guys are already investing in your number 1 asset. This is something that they'll give you multiples for years to come, little years to come. Right, which is incredible. That's why I love coaching. I love what Ian's doing. I love the business we're in because it's going to pay you long-term dividends. So that's number 1. So that's why I first started doing it early on. Right now, even at that, and then the next thing would be investing in businesses, which is like buying businesses, right? Investing in businesses. I don't really do that, but like that's the next thing. But then below that, it's whatever you're going to be, about, I should say. I think from an investing perspective, I think most people fall into the trap of investing things they don't understand. And that becomes like a really dangerous game. They go off the hype of people, off of Twitter, off of social media, and they make really bad decisions. So wherever you're going to invest in, choose things you actually know a little bit about. Now, for me, I was like, I'm not that smart. So what did I do? I'm investing in like index funds. All right. I'm doing the basics to max everything out. So for example, if you have a 401k, I maxed my 401k out until I became, and I'm sure happened to Ian, you become what's called an HCE, highly compensated employee, and you no longer can do the max contribution. So it's a whole thing. So then you have to do some more backdoor stuff, et cetera, which is totally fine. I maxed out the 401k till I couldn't, right? I maxed out the Roth IRA until I couldn't. I maxed out the IRA until I couldn't. I also, I got to a level where they had something called in the company, it's like this additional like executive compensation plan where it pulls money before taxes to invest into a separate bucket. I maxed that out as well. So I was doing all these things to max out, and then I also would, all the extra cash, I would buy investments like index funds and other stocks I really believe, things I actually knew about. And that's what I focused on. If it was something I didn't know about, so for example, I didn't get into crypto game until 2021. So because I didn't know enough about it. So I waited a little bit. But on top of that, I also leverage dollar cost averaging as well as a strategy. So from a habit perspective, I'm automatically buying stocks, investing every single week, index fund, whatever it's going to be. So this way it just multiplies over time. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
Awesome. Thank you, Julian. Always have great questions. Let's take Shane O'Connor next, my man. You're up, Shane. I don't know if you're able to go on camera or not, but I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Hey, fellas. Unfortunately, I can't go on camera. My Zoom camera's not working this week. But Marcus, yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm fanboying over here a little bit. I follow you on LinkedIn and love your content.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
But yeah, I also just been taking notes in my phone here. I love the concept of the 5 M's. I guess the one that I find the hardest to connect with, and probably why I'm here the most, and something I'm working on with Ian, is connecting to that, the mission, like really the why. And I find when I'm not closely connected with my mission, it can lead to a lot of like peaks and valleys in terms of my motivation, in terms of my performance. And while I've been successful in sales, I really don't think I've connected with my mission. So I'm just curious, would you have any advice for someone in my shoes?
Sure, man. Well, first off, do you know what your mission is?
I mean, no, I don't have a concrete mission, I got to say. Yeah, not really. Yeah,
that's the first step, right? Because and by the way, I think Ian brought up a great point. It doesn't have to be this huge, grandiose thing. It could be something that just serves you. That's really important. It serves you, that motivates you. It might be in the season that you're in that's going to serve you, right? So, for example, it's like, it's going to be the best version of me every single day. Whatever it's going to be, whatever you, we're going to figure it out right now, but this takes some soul searching. This is like a hard question for most people to think about. It's like, you got to sit, give yourself 4 hours, think, just start throwing every idea in a Google Doc. But once you come clear on it, how can you then take it and not just take it as like a grandiose, huge idea, this is my mission, but actually then break it down into a very tangible thing you can do every single day. So let me give you a really simple example, right? So I think about like, paint a picture of your best version of yourself. Imagine 1 year from now, you wake up and you had to write out exactly what your life was like from the time you get out of bed, how you feel, what you're due from every single minute for the whole day, and what happens that if you were the best version of you. If to get to that point, what habit would you need right now that you can do right now? That could be anything, one tiny tangible thing, and you make that your mission every day to do, right? So, for example, do you have any kids, Shane?
I don't have any kids, no.
Okay, no worries. Married, spouse, anybody?
I have a girlfriend, yeah, but not currently married, not yet.
All right, that's okay. Do you kind of like her?
I do, yeah, very much.
All right, cool.
like
All right,
her.
cool. All right, that's good. Now we're getting an hour somewhere. All right, cool. So like, I'm gonna make something up. It doesn't have to be this, but like, if you were the best boyfriend ever, what would one thing she would love to see from you every day? And you think about whatever that is as an example, right? And it could be as simple as maybe it's if you don't live with her, you send her a text in the morning, good morning, I love you, hope you have a great day, right? So I'll give you an example. When I was dating my wife, girlfriend at the time, every morning that was part of what I did. That was part of me being a good boyfriend. I text her. We didn't live together. Good morning, babe. I love you. Hope you have a great day. So that way, it's like that's me doing a little bit toward that mission. It's very minor, but it all contributes, right? So that's where I would start, get clear on the best version of you, what that needs to become, what your mission might be, and then break it down into hopefully a very simple, easy step that you can feel good doing every single day.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I would add, Shane, it's like, who am I? Ask the question, who am I when I'm at my best? When do I feel my best?
Correct.
And then say, what can I do every day that is aligned with that, right? In other words, this version of me is abundant Shane, if you want to call him that, or this is my best self. What does that person do every day? And if you do that, then you become that person and you can start that habit stacking. So make your mission, again, show up as the best version, because then you're going to feel good. When you feel good, everything else flows. So
that's it, man.
That's awesome. Appreciate it, fellas.
Great
I
question.
think we only have 2 minutes left. Yagna, you had a question. Your hand went down, but we have enough time for one more question. So if you're there, Yagna, you can go ahead and ask it. He might have just went on mute. He put his hand down.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy. Cool. Last question. Go ahead, Yagna.
Marcus, thanks for taking the time today. This is awesome. When I got into sales a couple of years ago, straight out of restaurants, someone told me to go on LinkedIn and just look up salespeople to start following them and reading. And you were the very first one that I found. And so I've been following your content since then. So
thanks, man.
just like Shane here, fanboying a little bit. But I think my question is, you're talking about, sort of making these improvements and over time they've stacked up and you hadn't even realized, right? How do you balance your energy in terms of what you're improving? Because sometimes let's use like physical fitness example, right? You start going to the gym more, you start being more active, taking better care of your health, start seeing results there. Maybe you pour a little bit too much into there, right? So how would you check in with yourself while you were making all these changes to make sure that the changes were taking you where you want to go?
That's a really great question. So I think the first, and you bring up a really great point. I think the first step is if you try to change everything in your life, it's really hard to maintain. That's just reality. That's just like a New Year's resolution. It's impossible. But if you can identify the biggest priority first, which is going to have identify what's your biggest constraint, right? What's your biggest thing? If you could pull that lever, it has the greatest impact across the board. How can you work on that first? So for example, if it's health, okay. So as you start to work on the health and you're working on doing these things, how can you systemize and make it easier? How can you make it easier? How can you make it more effective? How can you do more in less time? And that's where it starts. So let me give you a really simple example. As I started getting into health, I used to work out for 2.5 hours a day. It was awesome. It was great. No kids, right? Date my girl, it's great. It's totally different. But then you get busy. You don't really have that time. And I realized if I can find if I can build a constraint around it, how can I make it better? So I'm like, okay, how can I make 2.5 hours be an hour? Oh, weird. All I had to do was pay close attention and be more focused. Done. Hour. How can I make an hour 30 minutes? So now my workout's down to 30 minutes. Because I built a constraint around it, and I realized there's things I was doing too much of. Now that won't happen overnight, all right? But you choose something and you start to work on it, and you start to improve it, and you pay close attention. And one of the greatest things you can do, I believe, is build a tight feedback loop for yourself, right? So for example, if you're I'm going to work on my M5 every single day, I call it the M5, right? Mm-hmm. Every day, just write down in a journal how you felt about the M5. And over time, when you reflect back, you'll be able to see patterns and you'll realize, interesting, how else can I fix this? How else can I reduce this? Or, hey, I'm taking too much time here, because your life's going to shift over time where you have less time, etc. And then you might have to shift what you're actually doing, right? So that's where I would start first. Like you start going all in on it, right? You get really focused. And then how can you start reducing the amount of time it takes to actually do it? But then you also have a type feedback loop to catch yourself to improve it. And if you want to be like superhuman, this is what I do as well, which really helps, is at the end of the week, I actually review my whole prior week. And I take a look at what can I do less of? What can I get rid of? What can I do more of? What took away my energy? What drove my energy? And how can I take that into the next week? But that also means you have to have a really tight calendar. So that's why I do everything in my calendar, because this helps me have a good idea of where my time is being spent. Right. So hopefully
That's the theme of this, right? Scoring
Yep.
your week. On Thursday, most of the
That's
stuff
it.
is done week in, week out. It's what Brandon Fluharty talked about when he had Timular as the keeping track of how you're spending your time. Yagna, it's really simple. What do you need right now? In other words, who are you called to be right now? Maybe it's work, maybe it's family, maybe it's health, maybe it's spirituality, but what's calling you right now? And those are the things that take more time. Whereas if you're dialed in other areas, you can scale back and they're just part of your identity. So
the key is elimination first. Get rid of the stuff that doesn't serve you, so you have more time to actually do those things.
that's right. That's right. Well, we are at the hour, Marcus, and
Absolutely.
I would love to keep going with this. I have to actually start a coaching call, but I am going to share this out on YouTube and
Awesome.
via the newsletter. First and foremost, thank you for coming on, man. You are just a gem, nugget after nugget. I know I am super fortunate to have the relationship that we have, and I'm just grateful that now other people in the program have gotten a taste of what you bring to the table, because you really are pretty remarkable in so many ways. So if people want to follow you, get a hold of you, learn about your program, I mean, what's the best way for them to continue?
Super simple. You hit me up on LinkedIn. Boom. There's my URL, Genius. It'll take you right to my LinkedIn. Hit me up on there. You can head to my website if you like, whatever you want to do. I'm just happy to help support you all here, and I appreciate being on it. My absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Marcus. Thanks everyone for joining. And
Thanks everybody.
Next week. Have a good one. Take care.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.